All right, there we go. Hello, class. So today I'm going to be talking about the book of Isaiah, and just going to break down some of its content, structure, authorship, brief summary as well. So in terms of authorship, it is pretty widely accepted that the book is rooted in a historic prophet called Isaiah. He lived in the kingdom of Judah during around the 8th century BCE. Although he may not have been the writer of the book completely, he is kind of a sort of an author figure within the text. Now, there's a couple observations that lead us to think that. So chapters 40 through 55 presuppose Jerusalem had already been destroyed, and the Babylonian exile is already in effect. They speak from a present in which the exile is about to end. Chapters 56 through 66 assume an even later situation. So this would have been after Isaiah was preaching and after he died. And it's not presented as prophecy, but presented as history. So there's a later writer in here who's expressing that kind of through his voice. So it seems to be a lot of prophecies brought together. There are some stylistic differences as well. And okay, so during this period where this historic figure, Isaiah ben Amoz, lived, this is during the reign of 4 kings from the mid to late 8th century BCE. During this period, Assyria was expanding westward, and their origins are in modern day Iraq. And so they were, threatening Judah, subjugated them in 701. The conquest of Jerusalem by Babylon and its exile in 586 ushers in the next stage of the book. And in this stage, Isaiah is addressing himself to the Jews in exile, offering them a kind of hope for return. So with this period, in terms of what's going on in the world, this was the rise of Cyrus the Great, this king of Persia who greatly expanded their empire. He ruled from a small kingdom in eastern Iran to expand across, from the Mediterranean to Central Asia. And in 539, he conquered Babylon. So this Isaiah's prediction of the fall of Babylon, glorification of Cyrus as a deliverer, that all takes place within the text. And it was the Persians who ended the Jewish exile. And by 515, some of those exiled people returned to Jerusalem and rebuilt the temple. So that's the history. I mean, that's all things that happened, and it gives a background for a lot of what occurs within the text. So there are 3 major divisions, and there's Proto-Isaiah, Deutero-Isaiah, and what's called Trito-Isaiah. So chapters 1 through 39 are Proto-Isaiah. 40 through 55 are Deutero-Isaiah. So Proto-Isaiah, that's thought to be the words of the original Isaiah. 40 through 55, Deutero-Isaiah is an anonymous author writing during the exile. And then there's a third one, the Trito-Isaiah, is an anthology of about 12 different passages, and that's the last 10 chapters. Another way to divide it is in 2, where the first half are about warnings and judgment and promises of subsequent restoration of Jerusalem. So that, and then the second part, judgment has taken place, restoration is at hand. So it's a prediction of a fall and prediction of return, and then confirmation that then did occur. So that summary leads to the following. So the book opens up, sets about themes of judgment, restoration of the righteous. God has a plan throughout all of this. And one day the world will come to Zion, meaning Jerusalem, for instruction, but the city must be punished, cleansed of evil, and Israel is invited to join in this plan, because Jerusalem's in Judah. Okay, so having said that, we're moving into the New Testament pretty soon, and you can see in this content why the book of Isaiah might be so appealing to Christian theologians, because this idea that the world is going to look to Jerusalem for instruction was seen in a sense as prefiguring Jesus. Now, this is a work obviously that exists within its own context in the Hebrew Bible, and a lot of this class is about those contexts. So you sort of have these biblical works written for the people living at the time, obviously have no knowledge of what's going to come after that. And then you have the ways in which the texts are used and reconfigured to fit into a different theology. And so that's what Christian, excuse me, that's what Christian theologians did. Okay, so city has to be punished, has to be cleansed of evil. And chapters 5 through 12 talk about the Assyrian judgment against Israel, and righteous rule by the Davidic king that will follow after the arrogant Assyrian monarch is brought down. Chapters 13 through 27. And by the way, a lot of this is material we've already seen. We've talked about David a lot. This is recasting some of that. Chapters 13 through 27 announce the preparation of the nation for Yahweh's world rule. So this is one of the first references that we're seeing as a class of the concept of a Yahweh as a global deity rather than a regional deity. So for the Israelites in the first 5 books of the Bible, Yahweh is their God. There are other gods. He's their God. He's the most powerful God. Here, he takes on a more global context, to be meaning that he's the God for everyone. And that is an important shift. And it's something certainly that is the basis of a lot of Christianity as well. Chapters 28 through 33 announce that a royal savior, a Messiah, will emerge in the aftermath of Jerusalem's punishment and the destruction of her oppressor. Okay, so again, the reference to a Messiah in Isaiah is a key link to the New Testament for Christians. They interpret this as a reference to Jesus. The concept of a Messiah in Judaism has several different contexts, and was thought by many to be a military leader, like a Joshua kind of figure. And that's what they expected the Messiah to be. Jesus sort of flips that idea on its head. There's a lot of militaristic imagery in the New Testament. Jesus himself, of course, is not like a military general or something like that. But again, that section 28 through 33, very key chapters for Christianity, trying to make links back to the Old Testament. Okay, so the oppressor, this is in the chapters are 34, 35, who is identified as Babylon now, is about to fall. 34 and 35 talk about how Yahweh will return the exiles to Jerusalem. 36 through 39 tell of the faithfulness of King Hezekiah to Yahweh during the Assyrian siege and restored community. So you have these kind of models of this is what a righteous ruler looks like. Chapters 40 through 54 are going to talk about the restoration of Zion and why it's happening. It's happening because Yahweh has designated King Cyrus the Great as someone who's going to deliver them from this situation. And chapters 55 through 66, so the end, it's an exhortation to Israel to keep the covenant. So this is a story about lessons. It's about the lessons that they should take from, that the Israelites should take from this exilic experience as they come back and rebuild the temple, and in doing so renew their covenant with Yahweh. So it's a theme that we've seen over and over, that when bad things happen, it is to teach a lesson. It's out of a punishment for a kind of collective sin of the community, and that after a certain period, they're worthy to come back, and that Yahweh will welcome them back at that point. So, so that's kind of the message of Isaiah. That's some of the links that this text is going to make to the New Testament as well. And so that will round out that text. So where we're going from here, we're going to look at Book of Daniel next week, and then we're also going to look at Mark. So we're gonna go into our first gospel. We're reading Mark first. The reason I assigned Mark first is that it is the most cogent, straightforward account in a gospel, and it's one of three what's called synoptic gospels: Mark, Matthew, Luke. They tell the same story with some differences, some different points of emphasis. And then John, we're going to close with John in a couple weeks. And John is a very different kind of gospel, and it's much more philosophical and reflective. I think that it's less focused on a straightforward narrative, whereas the other three are seemingly based on each other. So it introduces a lot of theological points that are kind of glossed over or not developed in the others. But I think that in terms of from a storytelling perspective, we're gonna start with Mark, and then we'll go from there. So okay, so next week, so on Tuesday I'm going to cover Daniel. Thursday I'm going to cover Mark. Remember also this week to turn in your journals. Try to get those in by April 12th, and I will look forward to reading those. I'll have some comments. I do have a quiz over Esther up. I'm not giving a quiz over Isaiah, although Isaiah will show up on the final exam. Final exam will be an online final over material from the second half of the course. So I will include some Isaiah material there. Okay, so next week, Daniel on Tuesday, Mark on Thursday, and I look forward to reading that. Chris, very good to see you. I'm going to stop the recording, but if you have any questions or anything, just let me know.